Swedish-British journalist, filmmaker, political writer, and author of 5 books, Pelle NEROTH Taylor, on today's News Talk, TNT.
Welcome to the Pelle NEROTH Taylor Show on this Thursday afternoon. Well, we've got an action-packed 2 hours ahead of us, as usual. Today is Religious-Based Violence Victims Day. I don't know what that means. Does it mean that the perpetrators are religious or the victims are religious? Anyway, we've got an Indian guest, a blogger and podcaster, and hosts a very good a sort of Indian documentary type podcast website, which gives you all the latest on that huge country's doings and their social and political issues, the things that get people going. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, how the Indians see the riots in the UK, how they regard the geopolitical situation. But we'll start off with this story that's gripped the world of a 31-year-old doctor who was raped at her working place hospital at night when she was taking a nap after a 36-hour shift by almost 10 men. Her father found her body semi-naked. Her pelvis girdle was broken. Her legs were at 90 degrees in opposite directions, and her eyes were bleeding, apparently. Because she can't be named for reasons of Indian legislation, but anyway, it's got a lot of Indians up in arms and asking about the rape crisis in that country, which has been going for quite a long time. We've got Joe Hoft on as our second guest, a friend and returning, the guy who's single-handedly trying to stop the election being stolen in 2024. And he wrote 3 fantastic books, all called The Steal, volumes 1 to 3, showing it is a kind of dinner party conversation or critic killer, as it were. That's what I'm always looking at, your obstreperous nephew or your know-all uncle who gets all their mainstream news from the mainstream and they're so cocky about it. Well, I think he makes a very good case for the this election having been stolen, and in the part 2 of the volume, and in part 3 talks about all the cover-ups and how January 6th isn't what we thought it was. And I say that because the Democrats had an orgy of self-righteousness yesterday during their fourth day of the Democratic National Convention, where they're talking about themselves as a party of democracy. Well, they're not the party of democracy if they stole the election, are they? And on that very similar theme, we've got RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, who's a strategist, and other experts have been on this show a couple of times. RFK is perfect candidate. The only thing I think I disagree about is his very, very pro-Israeli stance. But everything else, I think he might have been perhaps even better than Trump. I don't know. But perhaps not as sort of, connecting with, working people. I'm in 2 minds about it. But I'd vote for either of them. And if they were to stand against each other, that would be the perfect US election for me. But RFK, who's a Democrat, of course, is part of the Kennedy family, was unable to compete because of the closed totalitarian nature of the democratic selection process. And then he ran as an independent, and the Democrat lawyers, part of this system, the Democrats have practically locked up the entire media and the judicial system, are have been doing very, very hard work to keep him out of the ballots, which requires various bureaucratic and administrative things. And he's been jetting around the United States trying to get on that. His strategists were on this show very recently, promising they'd be on all the ballots by the end of August. And it seems as if, well, that ain't going to happen. So one obstacle too many means that he's going to be throwing in his lot with Trump. I think he's going to make a speech this afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And so we'll have that. We'll have the predictions about what's going to happen with Larry Sharpe, who is a political expert. And finally, we've got Sterling Burnett talking to us about the net zero green New Deal, which promises the world. I mean, it's a perfect socialist paradise. But how is it going to be costed? And will it cost? It's going to cost $100 trillion. That figure's been mooted about, staggering figures. Well, Trump has hit back and said not a single one of those $100 trillion will benefit the American worker or come back to benefit America itself. It's all a boondoggle of a gigantic, enormous proportions. And we'll talk a little bit about Kamala and the Democratic Party's various green projects, which we have to cut. We have to move on beyond the hopey, changey, feely stuff and talk a little bit about those issues. So we're looking to Sterling Burnett to talk about that. And it's interesting. I mean, that not many people know that Kamala Harris was the co-sponsor of that Green New Deal a couple of years ago. as I said, did I say it yesterday? Well, no harm in repeating it. Some mischievous right-wing bloggers have been going around Chicago interviewing people about what they know about Kamala, and they all say they're going to vote for Kamala, but they have no idea why. Well, one is she's a woman, the other one who's wearing a Waltz Kamala Harris presidential campaign T-shirt didn't know who Waltz was. Surely it was said in jest. And then there's this, but it's all this hopey, changey, feely stuff, and people who are maybe not interested in politics are taken in by that, and that's democracy, I guess. People vote not only for executives, but they vote for a monarch in a way, and who represents their country and who they feel good about, and that's something that Trump will have to fight back on. And the election, I think there's a debate in early September. Maybe it's the only debate, and he should have to prove the vacuity of Kamala Harris. Anyway, we've got just a little bit more on that, the orgy of self-righteousness that we saw at the DNC yesterday. Don't forget to save democracy, said the people who destroyed democracy back in January 6th, 2021. While a piece of toilet paper fell out of her trouser leg, she went up to speak. Nancy Pelosi put the spotlight on January 6th yesterday with a video showing Trump urging supporters to fight before they stormed the US Capitol to try and block Joe Biden's 2020 victory. She savaged Trump but did not name him. She said, "Let us not forget who saved democracy. That day we did. Never before had a president of the US so brazenly assaulted the bedrock of our democracy," she added, "and so gleefully embraced political violence and so willfully betrayed his both the oath of office." Well, again, if you just look at the facts, if the election was stolen, then it was entirely justified to protest to get it, obviously. And the January 6th whole thing has been mythologized as well, in the sense that, the Democrats make loose talk about 5 policemen being killed. Actually, no policemen were killed, but 4 protesters were killed in very dubious circumstances. The whole January 6th thing was as dubious as we all know, and lots of people locked up on various dubious reasons. We've got talking on the polls, although the mainstream media, the legacy media, saying that the polls are quite evenly balanced. For what it's worth, Elon Musk put out a poll on Twitter, and he said it's very unscientific. And people voted, and he's got 200 million subscribers. 5.8 million people voted, and about 3/4 of them voted for Trump. Now, I'm the first to say this is not scientific. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. That said, apparently that platform has slightly more Democrats, and quite a lot of independents than Republicans. So maybe it isn't all that unbalanced. I don't know. I just put it out there. If we just to on a final thing, I think I want to talk about the continuing battle of words and ideas between the Brits and the Americans over the issue of free speech. I think the British do represent a more controlled form of speech. Their idea of free speech is free speech with responsibility, to be polite and not go beyond the bounds. And it is a conservative society. It's been an empire for a couple of 100 years. America broke away from that. Rebels, I believe it's almost genetic. I mean, the most rebellious people of that crowded and sophisticated island society left because they couldn't get their views out and they were upset with the status quo. So America became that country that always fought against the status quo. And America should never leave that, because that willingness to buck the trends, to go with your own ideas, to pursue the truth, to fight against authority, to fight against power, is the root of that great engine of innovation that America is, whether you're talking about technology or anything else. Of course, a lot of things wrong in America, but I think there's that root thing, the idea of freedom, and must never go away. And even when your mother country, as it were, dresses you down, looking down her nose like a sort of prefect or a mistress in a Scottish boarding school, naughty, naughty America, don't listen to them. Go your own way. Go with the spirit of 1776, I say to America, even though, of course, as Britain locked up a lot of people America locked a lot of people in J6. So, I mean, in practice, it might not be that huge differences between the two countries. I still think the spirit of freedom does burn more strongly in the Americans. But if you ask people to live up to their national myth or to the myth, I think you can get the people's best selves to behave. So that's what I'm saying. America, live up to your best self. Anyway, so there's a lot of talk. Interestingly, there's a guy called Larry the Cat, who is this Downing Street cat who's been around for 10 or 12 years, a favorite of photographers, dawdling around for many hours to see why the Prime Minister comes out of that famous door. And that cat is kind of purring and walking around and being photographed. And he's survived, 6 prime ministers now. Well, Larry the Cat has a Twitter account, and in the past, I think it was resolutely non-political and talking about, nonsense, and got more and more supporters. And of course, I guess it's some kind of young Foreign Office flunky, or, some 20-something, trainee or something is given the charge of that account, realizing that I don't know how many followers Keir Starmer has, or whatever, or other ministers, but Larry the Cat might be one of the most followed accounts in British politics. But double check that. But it's quite a heavily followed account, and you reach out to quite a lot of non-political people that way. And this Larry the Cat persona, which has said becoming increasingly political, says that criticizes the American freedom, and it's Elon Musk's support of far right voices. And then there's this guy called Sam Melia, who went around putting far right stickers on all sorts of places. And Larry the Cat said this was clear case of incitement, and then that got an inevitable pushback from 1776ers saying, well, no, because you can have KKK and you can have Hitler youth walking around in an American city and you get permission for march. Freedom means freedom. And Larry the Cat didn't really have a pushback on that. So, but culturally, you can see very big differences there in the approach to freedom. Freedom, as long as you say the right thing, and freedom means freedom. I really think that's the American thing. Anyway, well, it's open to discussion. Maybe we'll have people on from both sides of the argument. But we're going to go into our first guest after the break, because we're going to talk about the DNC and what's going on there. This is the Pelle NEROTH Taylor Show on TNT, and we'll be back after the break.
She used to dance and dream of a better life, a brighter future, with nutritious food to eat, a chance to learn, to get an education, and do incredible things. Today, thanks to Children International and friends like you, she dances for the world. Together, we give children in poverty a chance to set their sights high and achieve their dreams by ensuring that they have access to health care, education, life skills, and more, so they can grow, thrive, and believe in themselves.
Gracias. Gracias.
Learn more about Children International and join us in our life-changing work at children.org today.
The Light is Britain's far-right conspiracy theory paper spreading hate and vicious lies. No, that's what the BBC say. The Light is the only national newspaper bringing you the real news and informed opinion on what's really going on today. You can subscribe, order copies, submit articles, and read back issues on our website, thelightpaper.co.uk, and see for yourself why the establishment are so worried about the uncensored truth getting out to people every month. The Light Paper. Not for right, just right so far. thelightpaper.co.uk.
Free speech is alive and well on today's News Talk, TNT.
Welcome back to the Pelle NEROTH Taylor Show. Well, we're pivoting to India right now, where Abhijit Majumder is with us. He's a journalist, co-founder and editor-chief of earshot.in, which is an audio platform with a lot of interesting podcasts and I think visual productions as well. And I think you've written some books and you have other strings to your bow. But welcome to the show, Abhijit.
Thank you, Pelle. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
And not at all. Well, we just before the show, we were talking about the various topics. It's good to catch up with India. We haven't covered India that much since the election, I think 2 months ago. But of course, news rolls on all the time. And before we talk about the more serious geopolitics, I just want to talk about this high-profile rape case in India. Has it really shaken the country up? Because, you know, it seems if you judge by X, it's roiling the country.
Right. I think it has. It has shaken up the state where it has taken place, which is West Bengal. It has shaken up India. See, these are this sometimes it's not that such incidents do not happen, with some regularity. But the point is that there are certain cases where the public sort of really responded. They seem to be like inflection points, like it was with the Nirbhaya rape case, 2013, if I'm right. Yeah. And so it's the same here with the Arjikar rape case. This young girl who was actually gang raped, from all the versions that are coming out, because that kind of damage, that kind of brutality couldn't have been done by one person. So,
She was, I guess she was a kind of middle class, quite well off, quite beautiful and very accomplished. So maybe that helped. But a lot of the medical schools in India and the hospitals, I mean, her terrible fate managed to mobilize quite an important class of the Indian elite, if you like, the doctors and nurses and so on. How have they been expressing their anger at this event?
it's absolutely like this is a very rare kind of outrage that we're seeing, the outpouring of, and it's kind of bipartisan, at least at this point. I mean, both the left and the right people, from both wings of Indian politics, or people who support the left or the right, they have indiscriminately come together, and they have sort of expressed their outrage. They want to see the perpetrators punished. They suspect that there's a much bigger racket, much bigger evil behind this rape. It's not just a case of, it's not just a one-off, because things have been happening in this hospital for a long time. The state we are talking about, I happen to come from there. That's my native state, home state, West Bengal. That has been governed in a pathetic manner for the last 12, 13 years, since Mamata Banerjee came in as chief minister. And all sorts of things, violent mobocracy, complete Islamization of the state. Mind you, it's a border state with Bangladesh, and yeah.
How many Bengal? I mean, Western Bengal, I guess, is the city. The state of which Calcutta is the most famous city, or Kolkata. Yeah. What proportion? And it's right next door to Bangladesh, of course, which broke away in 1947 because it was nearly virtually all Muslim. But how many Muslims are there in West Bengal?
West Bengal now, there should be, officially the last census told us it's about 26%, but anybody would guess that it's well above 30 now. And that's that's a reason for concern, because the whole partition happened because Muslims wanted a separate state, which is Pakistan. So Bangladesh was East Pakistan, the current Pakistan was West Pakistan. Then Bangladesh broke away with the help of India and became and got freedom in 1971. But its Islamist tendencies are very much there.
So, I mean, is there quite a strong Hindu-Muslim sectarianism, or how are community relations there?
Well, there's a very strong Muslim sectarianism. If you see Bangladesh right now, after the coup or the forcible takeover of the government, if you look at how Hindus are being treated there, Hindus are being widely attacked. They're being forced to resign. Thousands of Hindus are being forced to resign, beaten up, insulted. Professors, I saw videos of professors being beaten up by their own students, made to resign.
Wow.
This has been happening in Bangladesh, and that Muslim sectarianism is very much, it's pretty strong even in this part of the border.
So you think there's been a spillover, Muslims feel encouraged by what's going on in Bangladesh itself, and a kind of
that is for sure. But there has been irrespective of the turn of events in Bangladesh, there has been there's been a very strong Islamist strain in India.
Do you think those? Well, are you saying when you said that there's a big a lot of sort of hidden forces behind this very high-profile rape case? Are you saying that it could go up all the way to government? Are the police forces involved? Do you think there are Islamist factions involved in this?
No.
Do we know, have they raped other groups? No, okay.
No. There's nothing. I don't think, at least in this case, nothing to point to the Islamist factions, has emerged. But yes,
Right.
there has been a massive attempt at cover up. It seems from the police. See, after this kind of a rape, it took them a fair bit of time to file the first information report. First, the principal of the college apparently told the parents that it's a suicide. I mean, anybody who has a look at that girl, who sees how battered she was, knows that it could not have been suicide. So it started from there. Then the viscera report, etc. That is also under suspicion. Whether the postmortem was done correctly. Then the principal under whom this happened and who tried to cover it up was transferred to another college and made a medical college and made the principal of that medical college. So almost like he has been rewarded. And we have seen in West Bengal scam after scam. I mean, these kind of frauds that from chit funds to the coal mafia to SSC, the examination and education mafia. You get jobs and you get seats by paying authorities. So there's this very strong speculation around around Arjikar Hospital that there was a racket going on in selling cheap medicine to generic medicine to companies. There were rackets on in which students had to pay to pass exams or do well in exams or in their thesis. So a lot of things, and there were apparently a lot of young doctors have alleged that there was a sex racket that was going on for a long time. If you go through the newspapers in the last, I would say 20 years, I was looking at some of the reports from Arjikar. Some doctor was killed because he was the whistleblower of a porn racket in 2003, as long back. Then there were the mysterious suicides, accidents,
wow,
all sorts of things.
That's incredible stuff. And is there any suspicion that she might have been like a whistleblower, or she was trying to bring this to people's attention, so she was raped as a kind of punishment for this?
There's a lot of talk about that. Her colleagues, they're in terror, they're petrified. Because, God knows what kind of action will be taken if indeed the state and very powerful people are involved, then their lives are at danger.
We've got to go into our news in a second, and we'll change the topic to Bangladesh. But we've got about a minute before the news. Do you think this story has legs? Do you think it's going to grow, or is it going to die down and the authorities are going to put a lid on it? What are your feelings?
The problem is that the scene of the crime seems to have been compromised. There were it wasn't within hours after this rape and murder. There was renovation that was going on very close to that place.
Mm.
Why would you even allow
Yeah.
renovation of the hospital when this has happened? And there was huge vandalism the next night by 7,000 people. A mob of 7,000 entered the hospital premises and vandalized everything.
Wow. So they might have been employed as a renter mob to destroy the scene of crime. God, it's amazing. Abhijit, well, we got to go into our half-hour news break, and we'll be back in a minute talking about India. We're going to talk about Bangladesh, and there's been a coup there, and it's right next door to West Bengal, so it's topical geographically. We're back after the news break.
Climate change policies will only widen the gap between the rich and the poor. On air 24/7. We're today's News Talk, TNT.
Welcome back to the Pelle NEROTH Taylor Show. We're talking Indian affairs with Abhijit Majumder, who has editor-in-chief of earshot.in. And if you're interested in Indian affairs, I recommend that you check that out, as well as the other sites that he's responsible for. We'll give a chance to talk about that in a while. Well, we're going to talk about Bangladesh now, where there's a coup been taking place, which it's been argued it was a color revolution by the Americans unleashed simultaneously against two BRICS countries, India and China. The mechanism featured all the proverbial time-tested shenanigans, direct involvement of the US ambassador to Bangladesh, Peter Haas, enormous pressure on the Sheikh Hasina government to hold elections assured of a US-friendly income, US mobilization by the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party, funds and logistics supporting so-called pro-democracy student protesters. Do you agree with that description, or would you differ from it?
It's complex, Pelle. There in Bangladesh, there is no denying that Sheikh Hasina actually ran a pretty tyrannical administration towards the end, especially to her last years were pretty autocratic in many ways. There was also a lot of corruption and there was inflation and all that. But what is the alternative, and what do we see now? We see again a mobocracy in Bangladesh. And the government that has been installed of Professor Mohammed Yunus. And now that the choice of the person itself betrays the involvement of the United States. And he is very close to the Clintons. He's a very close friend of the Clintons. He's close to the Obamas, and I would say the Democratic Party top brass. And this kind of anarchy that has been we have seen. It may or may not benefit the US, but it creates a destabilizing effect in the region. We are the immediate neighbors. India is the immediate neighbor of Bangladesh, and we will have a very rough time, sort of, if as we have seen in the last few days. Gratuitous violence, wanton violence, and the rise of Islamism. All in the name of revolution. We are overthrowing the tyrant and stuff like that. It's a bit like Libya after Gaddafi.
Wow, wow, that's incredible. Yeah. Do you, well, we talk a bit. You can talk a bit about. I'll give you some feeders. Do you think the Americans did this to rein in India, to give you something to worry about in your neighborhood, and to maybe some way control South and Southeast Asia? Now that BRICS and America, Russia and India kind of solidifying around this BRICS movement, what are your thoughts?
Especially the American Democratic Party has problems. I'll be very blunt with India, with a strong government in India, and we in India suspect that the deep state has also a fair bit of discomfort with a strong government for the last 10 years, and which has got another term in India. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I mean, sorry, no, I was going to say, I mean, there's a very binary picture of the world that comes out of Washington and New York, especially on the Democrats, which is with democracies threatened by authoritarians and the far right everywhere. So whether it's China, India, Russia, Hungary, it's and domestically Trump, and you just need to say Modi's the Indian Trump, and you get liberals all over the West going bananas, basically.
Exactly, and who are they to, who are they to decide what kind of governance a nation chooses? Have they improved? Has America improved Iraq now after toppling Saddam Hussein? Has it improved Libya after toppling Gaddafi? Look at the mess it has created, one after the other.
Absolute disaster. Yeah.
There was no
exactly. So when you talk about Libya, sorry, over to you, sir.
Yeah, sorry.
Libya, as Bangladesh as Libya, is a really frightening prospect for anyone. I mean, we suffered in Europe enormously because there was a huge flow of migrants and destabilization, and it was all NATO's and the West's fault. That's why so many people in the Middle East, when they said they side with Russia in the Ukraine conflict, because they said NATO has bad form. We're going to knock one country against the wall after the next, and expect people to love us for spreading democracy.
Exactly. This is not the way to spread democracy. You can't topple a democratically elected government that was Sheikh Hasina's by this kind of a mob. If Sheikh Hasina had not been airlifted, just 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes later, her fate would have been the same as Gaddafi's.
Yeah.
She would have been lynched, and a woman leader, mind you. There was a mob of 500,000 people there in Dhaka, 500,000 people begging for her blood, coming into that building. So is this some kind of a, this kind of a communist, it's almost a communist takeover of a government. It's almost like a communist revolution, bloody overthrow of a leader through bloody revolution and all that. And this doesn't bode well, especially when there is a heady mix of Islamism.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I was talking in my monologue, and yesterday during the Democratic convention, they were boasting about how we got to stop authoritarianism, and we, the Democratic Party, stand up for democracy. Never mind that that Kamala has been an unelected person. Never mind that Biden was pushed in an unelected way, and never mind that they're stealing the election, maybe. And now they're destroying for you Indians. They're destroying for Bangladeshis, and they call themselves the Party of Democracy. It's outrageous. And of course, not many people know about Bangladesh because most people, especially in the US, are concerned with their domestic politics. And it's interesting how the Americans often support Islamist movements to destroy a country. So they supported Islamists in Libya, and talking them up as some kind of democratic freedom fighters, like the revolutionary movement. And they did the same in Syria. They did the same in Afghanistan. Yeah. Over to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Afghanistan, Bin Laden was trained by the CIA.
Yeah.
So, what is the point there? For years, America has supplied money to Pakistan to contain terrorism, knowing fully well that money was going into driving terrorism in the region. So,
how is India going? We've got to slowly start to wind up now. How is India? What are the next steps that Modi is going to do in response to this? Are you trying to contain it? Are you going to deal with the Americans? Are you going to make alliance with the Chinese, with the Russians, or what?
No, I think India is watching very, very closely the situation. India won't do anything hasty. Also, please remember that China would be watching this very, very closely, what is happening in Bangladesh. Because China is also extremely close to Bangladesh. There is one rare place where India and China were on the same page, which is having the Sheikh Hasina government with its flaws, but having it there because it had, there was a semblance of secularism, protection for minorities, etc., etc. There was some economic development. So both India and China wanted her there. So China would be watching if, as Hasina had alleged, that US wants a military base in Saint Martin Island or on the, Chittagong hill tracks. Then China would be very, very wary. So would be Russia, because the Bay of Bengal would then be controlled. US will have a very strong control over Bay of Bengal. So China, India, Russia, all will be very.
Exactly. So it's a way for the Americans. If they open a NATO base, and NATO is going to have a more Asian focus now, right on the Bay of Bengal, in this island just off the coast of Bangladesh, it will totally change the equation, and everyone in Asia will be very angry at this. I'm afraid we're going to wind up there, Abhijit. Apart from your earshot.in website, is there any way we can find your work?
Yes, I have a book coming up, which is called India's New Right. That'll be released next month. And I'm a consulting editor for for CNN News 18 here. So I write for them, and I have my TV appearances. That's
okay.
More or less it.
Abhijit, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Very astute analysis there, and I think we understood much more about what the situation is in the Bangladesh than we did half an hour ago. Thank you so much. Brilliant analysis. Abhijit Majumder, journalist and co-founder and editor-chief of earshot.in, contributor to CNN, and has got a book coming out next month. And check that out if you want to find out about India's new right. We'll be back with more guests after our advertising break, and we're pivoting back to North America.
From weather and traffic reports to news of political developments,
we turn to journalists for the information we need to live our daily lives.
Journalists around the world provide news that is essential for democracy,
for personal freedom, and for safety and stability.
Yet their ability to report freely and safely is under attack like never before.
Too many journalists are paying with their lives. They face exponential risks, and they've already paid a heavy toll.
Death threats, online harassment, and physical attacks
are becoming a daily experience of journalists in all countries.
We just want people to be safe, to be able to get our readers the information that they need to make informed decisions.
They checked my phone and realized that it was Pegasus. I feel myself like I'm naked at the street.
These charges were politicized from the start.
Facts win. Truth wins. Justice wins.
C'est énorme pour moi d'être là, d'être libre, surtout que je ne m'y attendais pas du tout.
Stand with a free press.
Stand with journalists whose reporting won't be silenced. Press freedom is your freedom.
Hi. I'm your retirement fear, but don't be scared. You're still in pre-retirement.
Does that mean I have more time to plan?
Precisely. Here, this is pretirement.org.
Retirement savings options? Potential tax breaks.
Ooh.
This isn't scary. I'm doing it.
You got this.
Visit thisispretirement.org for free resources to help you customize your action plan.
From the Cold War to propaganda and the deep state, Pelle NEROTH Taylor on today's News Talk, TNT.
Welcome back to the Pelle NEROTH Taylor Show on this Thursday afternoon. Well, this week's been DNC week in Chicago, and there was an orgy of self-congratulations about how the Democrats are standing for democracy. But those of us who remember 2020, those fraught days when all the allegations of election steal were going on, we won't forget, will we? Because certainly a party that claims to represent democracy and then goes out very firmly and talking about the whole January 6 things that Nancy Pelosi did yesterday with a piece of toilet paper hanging from her trouser leg. Sorry about that. But is she just talking BS? Well, it does seem as if the election was stolen. And if you want to go to a book that really describes it very well, is Joe Hoft's books about the steal. I think they're volumes 1 to 3. I've read 2 of them, and they're excellent read. I can highly recommend. You can find them on Kindle. Well, obviously, if the election of 2020 is stolen, that's water under the bridge. How can we prevent the election of 2024 from being stolen? Well, I'm very glad to say that Joe Hoft is with us. He's the host of the Joe Hoft Show, weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Frank's Speech and Lindell TV and Conservative Dailies, an author, journalist, and former executive in Hong Kong. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Hey, Pelle. Great to be back with you. Great to be here.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, I'm so glad that you're being a responsible Democrat in the true sense of the word, Democrat with a small d, and that you have actually been doing everything you can to make sure that the election of 2024 is not going to be stolen. Is that right?
Absolutely, and thanks for asking. Yes, after the 2020 election, actually leading up to the 2020 election, I'm with my brother, Gateway Pundit. We worked so hard to get the news out, the truth out about Trump and about Biden, and just did everything we could. It was like I gave it all. Then comes election night, hoping I'm going to relax after that. And instead, it turned into an absolute nightmare as we saw results the next morning after we go to bed for just a few hours and wake up to find that Michigan and Wisconsin had switched overnight. Pennsylvania was locking the doors and not letting anybody in for 3 days while they, I believe, manufactured ballots in a back room, 1 million or more ballots they messed with because President Trump was up on Biden by about 1 million votes on Election Day in Pennsylvania. So they had a lot of work to do. Georgia, they did the same thing. And in Arizona, we didn't know for weeks what the result was there. So, it was a lot of work after that. And then I ended up writing 3 books based on mostly the work that we put together at Gateway Pundit over the next few years and haven't stopped. So lots going on still.
Well, I'll just kick off with a summary of the because people say, what can you put on a beer mat or on a piece of note paper that can, you can attack those people who read the mainstream media, the corporate media, the legacy lie media, and say, well, that's just a conspiracy theory. So I go to your book sometimes actually when I need to refresh my mind. The second part is one. So you said that, for instance, Trump won 16 out of 17 bellwether counties and then allegedly lost the election. Now, these bellwether counties, I mean, there's one's called Wood, one's called Essex, one's called Washington, one's called Ottawa, one's called Vigo, and so on. They always choose the winning candidate since 1984, except Trump. Trump won 16 out of 17 of these, and yet he loses. So you as an auditor, you've had a long experience of an auditor. I mean, that flagged... They're all your red flags going up there. And then you have voter turnout in Michigan and Wisconsin at 91 and 87%, which is unheard of. It's almost impossible in an American election where the turnout is something like 55%. Are there a couple of other of those red flags that you wanted to flag up now?
Well, that was kind of the first step. All these things started jumping out, I guess that. And then we looked at the data from like Wisconsin, and all of a sudden, we call it an F curve. All of a sudden, and we saw it recently in Venezuela, same thing, using machines down there. All of a sudden, Trump's way ahead. And then, boom, it shoots up and Biden takes the lead. And that all happened, we found out, 3 a.m. in Milwaukee. About 130,000 ballots were dropped after Trump had 110,000 or so a vote lead. So we saw it in Michigan as well, and recently in Venezuela. So there's something going on.
One of the really things that really convinced me was the way that so there was a big vote batch for Biden in all the states where he was losing, but then after that, when the vote counted for the next couple of days, the vote were counted in an exact proportion. I mean, so I think, was it Biden won 60 and Trump won 40% exactly in every single batch of successive votes, which is statistically impossible. I mean, it sounds as if it's manufactured, right?
Yeah, it absolutely was. And yeah, and then like I said, in Philadelphia, they locked us out of the room in this big gymnasium-sized building where nobody could go in and see what was going on for 3 days. And my background's as a professional auditor doing audits around the world. One of the main things that you need to sign off on any results as an auditor is just common sense stuff. I want to know. I want transparency. I want to see everything. That's how we step into an audit. Show me everything. We can sample. We can look at big data sets. There's all sorts of stuff we can do. But when we're done using our auditing techniques, we are confident that the result that we've come up with is accurate. We cannot say that in this 2020 election. And that's my point. As a professional auditor, I never would have signed off on this, nor would any professional auditor. And I've even said the other day, it hit me, proof of that is that none of the big four accounting firms jumped in. None of them said, hey, let us look at it. We're here. We're the experts. We'll take a look. None of them did, because they knew if they did, they'd find massive reasons not to certify the election. And then they'd be targeted by this regime for the rest of their existence. I mean, this regime already took down Arthur Andersen back in the early 2000s with a bogus crime that later was proven wasn't even a crime. It didn't matter. 86,000 people lost their jobs around the world thanks to this corrupt DOJ. So that was in the early 2000s. So I can't blame the big four firms for not jumping in. But the reason they didn't, I believe, is because they knew this thing was a mess. Anybody looking at it with a professional background in auditing would have said, no way, I'm not certifying this. If you can't let me in a room for 3 days while you're counting 1 million or 2 million ballots, well, then, I can't sign off on those. We found out in Arizona through the audit later, which wasn't reported to me until like 6 months after the audit, was that when they started going through the boxes of ballots in Maricopa County, which is Phoenix, a huge county, one of the biggest counties in the U.S., when they started going through the boxes, the first 3 days, every single box of ballots had been opened. The seals were broken. And yet they went ahead and moved forward with the corrupt audit there, knowing that. And from an auditing perspective, if I got a box that seal's broken, I'm not gonna count it. I'm gonna say I don't know if it's correct. I don't, so I can't include that in my results. And fortunately, every single box was that way when they went to do the audit in Maricopa in the first 3 days, which was about 25% of all the votes in that county. So it was a mess. And that's the kind of stuff that we just can't put up with in this next election. The machines are still there. We haven't got rid of them. There's massive problems with the machines. A report came out of Georgia. Maybe we've talked about this before, Pelle, about how the systems there aren't secure. There's Dominion systems they put in place. And a report came out from a professional IT expert out of the University of Michigan, a liberal, who said, hey, these machines, they're basically, there's no security, the security's broken. They've got security issues. And in the corporate world, maybe we've talked about this too, you don't use systems that have security issues. You shut them down right now. It's not even a question, because you can't afford people to come in and get to your data and steal it, and you can't afford people to come in and shoot malware all over your system. It's a joke that we're still using these things, yet we found that out, and these same systems are going to be used in this election. So we still have a lot of work to do. And there are some, I've worked with some groups of people, and we're trying to figure out what to do. And we have some solutions there.
But how come, incidentally, about the machines, I wonder, I mean, one of my guests last week, I think, said that elections are stolen all over the world. I mean, everywhere within this sort of wider US empire, not just Venezuela, but even in Europe. And because I think the last election in Sweden was quite dodgy, where the so-called far-right party who wanted to limit immigration, they dropped back when there was a IT outage at some point in the evening, and they came on again, and they'd lost 5 or 6 points, and they ended up as the third or fourth party. Not too small, but not big enough to win. Anyway, I mean, I think it's the story of the century if it can be firmed up, but it's hard to know where to start investigating. But I mean, Joe, the point is you're making, I mean, these things are not you said that we're very interesting at the beginning of your. Sorry. Over to you.
We haven't been given access to the systems. And again, as an auditor, okay, well then I'm not going to certify the results if you're using that system. I mean, that's it. It's point blank. I cannot, I need transparency to sign off. All of us do. I'm not going to say I believe you without validating this stuff in a business transaction. You have to validate. And when they're not allowing us to even see the source code in these systems, it's beyond belief that we're accepting that. That's not acceptable in the real world. I call it the corporate world. The real world, we wouldn't sign off on it. I'm sorry. We just say, okay, well, we can't sign off. And I'm telling you, the board of directors would be jumping in right away saying, you get this fixed. We want, and they'd be grateful that the auditors are pointing this stuff out. In our country right now, the Democrats and some of the Republicans are coming after those people that are standing up saying this isn't certifiable, which is the theme behind my books. It was stolen because it's not certifiable, this 2020 election. And we've got these people that are hammering the truth tellers. They're going after us for pointing out the obvious. It's absolute obvious. I got to tell you, I did audits even in communist China during my career. And I remember giving a list of information and asking, here's what I need in order for our team to do the work that we need to do to validate whatever it was we were looking at. They gave us every single piece of information we requested. Communist China. They wanted to make sure that they were going to be certified because and we certified them. They gave us everything we needed to give us confidence that the numbers we were looking at were accurate. In our U.S. elections, we don't have that. We've got we ask for stuff that's it's blocked from us, it's hidden, and when we do finally it's broken. We've still got 140,000 ballots in Georgia that have been caught up in the courts since 2020. Where there was 3 or 4 people signed affidavits saying all these ballots are the same. They look like carbon copy. They boxed them up, put them to the side, and they won't let us see them. And we've had to go all the way through the court. Supreme Court of Georgia said, yeah, you can look at them, but the people there still can't look at them. Same thing with the machines. We can't look there. So there's a lot of work to do. We're working really with an incredibly shoddy system.
Was one of the takeaways I got from reading your third book was the extent to which, I remember Sidney Powell and the Giuliani Road show, and you're going to expose all the illegality. And then it was taken to the courts or whatever. And then the courts dumped all over it. But it turns out, I remember it from the time, but it's good to be reminded of it, that they didn't actually rule if there'd been a fraud or not. They just said, it had no standing. The courts can't take this up. Although the mainstream media gave the impression that the fraud case has been disproven. But it was just because the justices didn't want to get involved. Ditto, the Republicans. Why are Republicans in the States, I don't know what you have in your job title, Secretary of State and so on, why are they not on your side? Don't they want Trump to win?
Well, I don't think they do. I think some really don't. I think some of these people, there's this uniparty, people use the term, and it's like they're working with the Dems, and they don't give a damn about the average American. They don't give a damn about elections. Like you said, democracy, the Democrat Party hasn't picked a candidate in years. It was Obama, Hillary. Obama won that. Then it was Hillary. Then it was Biden. Now here it is Harris. They pick the candidates. Nobody votes on them anymore. Nobody voted on Harris. It's, there was no primary for her. And that's the Democrat Party. Republicans are almost as bad. It's outrageous what's going on. American people are the ones that are suffering. We want people that aren't going to destroy our country and just kind of milk on it like a terrible cancer. It's just it's terrible what's going on. And there's a lot of people working really hard to try to fix this.
Well, one of the things I heard was that Trump, I don't know what his inner thoughts are. He says it's too big. But the feeling is, it's too big to rig. We're gonna win this, and Biden is so decrepit he can't possibly win. So it's too big to rig. We don't have to worry about that. But now they've got Kamala Harris in, who's a kind of plausible candidate. If she can read from a teleprompter, so it's no longer too big to rig, and they can do the same thing again. Do you think the Trump campaign, are they worried about this, or are they just sticking their heads, their fingers inside their ears and pretending not to hear or see anything?
I think there's some real corrupt actors in the RNC that are not wanting to help Trump. They pretend like they do, but they don't. They're doing things that just don't make sense. So, and Kamala Harris isn't good. She's maybe even worse than Biden. Her rating as a VP was the lowest ever. She's just pathetically terrible. She didn't even make it into the Iowa primary or caucus when she ran for office. She dropped out. She couldn't get any votes in California. She's terrible. Yesterday, Elon Musk had a poll on Twitter, showed Trump 70 to Kamala 30. I don't know, 4 or 5 million people
That could be
voted,
the opinion. Joe, we've got to wind up there, but we've got to have you on very soon, because I think this is the main issue leading up to the election. You know, even if you have the perfect election campaign, but if you can't win it legally, it's not who you vote, it's who counts the votes. I think Stalin said that.
Right.
Well, it seems to be the situation in the US right now. Joe Hoft.
That's right.
Joe Hoft show weekdays on the Frank Speech Lindell TV and Conservative Daily, author, journalist, and former executive in Hong Kong. Thank you so much, Joe. Come on again soon, my friend. This is the Pelle NEROTH Taylor Show. We'll be back after the hour and the news in about 7 minutes or something.